Two Live Crew got off in Florida. No cheers. And in spite of some unfortunate outcomes in our so-called elections, two of the most horrible people, Bob Martinez in Florida, who arranged the Two Live Crew bust, although he now may get Bennett's job, and Clayton Williams in Texas did not get to become governor after all. And a jury in Cincinnati agreed that prosecuting art museums for political reasons sucks. But how much is this really going to solve? You think we turned the corner? Or is that corner actually standing on end and it's the tip of the iceberg? To me, people like the rabid fundamentalists who arranged the Two Live Crew bust, or the sheriff down there, or Jesse Helms, or any of them, or William Dannemeyer, you like them, you'll love people like George Bush, a former CIA director with a long history of involvement of political dirty tricks, covert actions, death squads, assassinations, and if you believe the allegations in the Christic Institute lawsuits, and I think this is turned up in Warren Hinkle's column in The Examiner, among other places, a drug gangster as well. In a way, Al Capone has become president of the United States. And normally we might look to a so-called opposition, the supposed progressives, the Democrats, right? Well, the Democratic-controlled Senate last August approved on a voice vote Senate Bill 2834, the Intelligence Authorization Act for 1991. In the House, let's see, the number of the House bill is 5422. It was passed as well. In this bill, it gives ex-CIA director George Al Capone Bush power to do any covert operation he wants anywhere in the world and not tell anyone he's done it. He can use the CIA and the Army and the National Guard for covert operations inside this country, legally for the first time. He can use private corporations to get the money. He can also divert money from any other government agency he wants to fund it. He can use any government agency he wants for this. He could take money from AIDS research, he could use NASA for covert operations, whatever, and not have to tell anybody about it. Essentially, with a stroke of a pen, every Coatergate and Watergate crime has now been made legal. Pete Wilson sponsored the bill, Alan Cranston voted for it. And on top of that, we have House Resolution 4079. Number in this bill in the Senate is 2245, National Drug and Crime Emergency Act. This is the bill that authorizes money being spent to convert old Army bases in hot desert areas or hot temperate southern climates into concentration camps, labor camps, gulags, manzanars, for not only convicted drug users, but suspected drug users, which could mean practically anybody in this room listening to this. Suspected drug users. And it says in the House bill, it is forbidden to have air conditioners in these buildings, in these concentration camps, and prisoners should be forced to do hard labor for free on behalf of corporations that help run the jails. People like William Bennett and Bush and Attorney General Thornburg have proudly proclaimed that the American prison population is going to double in the next 10 years. It already doubled in the last 10 years, and we have more people in prison per capita than any other country in the world, and they say they're going to double that. And keep in mind, covert operations doesn't just mean planting a bug in the lampshade in someone's bedroom. It means murders, killings, assassinations of people whose political views or activities people like George Bush doesn't happen to like. And some of this is already going on. I'd like to ask old Abby Hoffman what he had to say on that subject right about now. Basically, what we've seen is a revival of what was called in Nixon and J. Edgar Hoover's days COINTELPRO, which meant things like surrounding the Black Panthers in Chicago's apartment building and machining gunning them to death through the walls, claiming self-defense. And the guy over there mentioned Geronimo Pratt, a leader of the Panthers in Los Angeles, who has been locked, unless he's out of solitary now, in solitary for years and years and years for saying that he didn't commit the murder that he claims people set him up on. He's not even allowed to talk about it. There's also a guy who tried to call a press conference right before the 1988 election saying he was Dan Quayle's old dope dealer. Yes, imagine smoking pot with Quayle. I'll say this, I sure wish he was president right now instead of Bush. I'd much rather have a dumb Nazi in charge than a smart Nazi who's bent on starting World War III just to enhance his oil accounts. Anyway, this guy, maybe he was a nut, maybe he was just talking off the top of his head, but if he was, why was he then thrown in solitary until after the election and has been denied parole ever since? And keep in mind that up in Humboldt County, GIs are sent for a war operation against the American people, putting guns to people's heads in their cabins. Or Earth First, a car carrying Daryl Cherney and Judy Berry, two of their main activists in Oakland, blows up. And I suspect they were probably supposed to blow up too, but they survived. And Daryl is now out of the hospital and living in fear of his life, occasionally performing. Last I heard, Judy Berry was still in the hospital, and only last August it was determined she might be able to walk again. Oh, good. Okay. Well, I stand corrected. Good. Anyway, and some rumors up in Mendocino County from the Earth First people were that they found plainclothes Mendocino County sheriff deputies standing in the crowd when the bomb went off. Instead of the usual half an hour to respond, the Oakland police were there in 5 minutes. They announced they were going to charge Judy and Daryl with blowing themselves up, which they still haven't done, but you wonder who did that. Cherney seems to think it was the timber companies, since they were also IWW members trying to organize non-union workers in lumber mills. But you also wonder whether somebody like Bush might have had a hand in this. Somebody who has no trouble with rubbing people out on any kind of a scale. Another thing that's not being reported right now, you'll notice how little a lot of this is being reported, is Bush has lied about the body count in Panama. Big time. He claimed, no problem, 24 Americans dead, 200 Panamanians gone, big deal. Well, that's still pretty outrageous to me. But the real total, according to Warren Hinkle or The Nation or SF Weekly or some of the others, and there's even been a 60 Minutes thing on this now where they've been unearthing Auschwitz-style mass graves of Panamanians that were dug and bulldozed by American soldiers. Real body count, 240 Americans killed, 2,000 to 5,000 Panamanians killed, many of whom died when the stealth bomber, which can't shoot straight, blew up wealthy neighborhoods. This kind of information I would think would be relevant right as Bush is trying to get people to follow him into a war. How is he going to lie about the body count there? You'll remember they did it first in Vietnam as well. And down in San Luis Obispo, there's now a paramilitary training center, Camp San Luis Obispo. Where is the Chronicle article I saw it in proudly proclaimed, finally, small town police officers, big city cops, National Guards, and the Army are learning to work together to fight drugs. In other words, like a junta, they are turning the Army and the police into one big force with their guns turned on us. The maneuver they were rehearsing when the Chronicle reporter was there was, this is a courageous way to fight drugs, ambushing a vehicle on a lonely road. What does this sound like to you? To me, this sounds like the war on drugs is a war on us. Basically, the way to get people hysterical enough that they will actually accept a banana republic type police state and junta that Bush and his thugs love so well. It seems like they're just testing us right now to see how much we'll tolerate before we get mad. Does anybody care if Earth First gets blown up? Does anybody care if the Army's running amok in our own country? Does anybody care about San Luis Obispo or William Bennett's proposals to randomly stop and search cars in people's houses? That's part of zero tolerance. You know, zero tolerance, which they passed right before the election in 1988, saying they find a couple joints in your car or on your boat in Florida. They can confiscate all your property and sell it before you're even brought to trial. So if you're found innocent, you've already lost everything. They can apply it to political targets and, you know, suspected drug users like they want to put in the camps, all they want. There was also something that came out at the Contragate hearings from our good friend Ollie North, where he revealed he'd drawn up a plan for martial law, saying in event of a national emergency, which he defined as anti-war protests against an invasion of Nicaragua, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the same people who were supposed to be in charge of earthquake and hurricane relief, well, why did they do such a bad job? Reagan transformed them into a martial law agency. They now have an underground bunker headquarters in Virginia and files upon files of probably everybody in this room. And what North wanted to do was round up, he said 100,000 or so people, lock them in camps, and to help do the job, he wanted to deputize the Posse Comitatus. Anybody not know who the Posse Comitatus is? Do you know who the Aryan Nations are? Neo-Nazi paramilitary group. The Posse Comitatus are a sister, I better say brother organization that operates in the South around southern Missouri. And right when this was blurted out, then a Democrat hero from the Watergate Committee, chairman of the Contragate Committee, Senator Daniel Inouye, cut off testimony and changed the subject. We have no idea if this same plan is being readied against protesters against a war in Kuwait and Iraq or not.
This compilation was brought to you by Fingerlipid Records. And the Quality Record Company.